seen that as one of the ones that's come up a lot in suggestions, so we might not actually have that here.
But it's always possible, so if anyone wants to suggest a dinosaur or suggest mechanics for Oranosaurus to get in game, you can always come to our Discord and suggest it, and we'll be more than happy to consider it.
I just checked our list of confirmed or discussed dinosaurs, and it is on the list of discussed.
Oh, did you say Anatosaurus? I'm sorry.
No.
I'm confused. I'm very confused right now.
Oh, poor Red.
We need Stephix. See, Stephix is the guy who knows all this paleontology stuff. I'm just like, huh? What's that?
I'm pretty sure he said Oranosaurus, and that's the hadrosaur with the... It has kind of like a cell on its back.
Think from JPOG.
Yes.
Well, if it is on our list, I'm actually not quite familiar with it, so it might be something that Sepix took note of. Sepix usually does a lot more control over our dino suggestions, and usually when we're in a position when we're starting to look for which creature we want to add next, I consult with him quite a bit. So it's possible that I just haven't heard about it yet, and that he might know more about this than I do. So I wish he was here today. I wish he was, because he'd probably be able to answer this question much better than I.
Well, there you go, Red. The next one's from Mehmet. Is it going to be possible to mod the game?
Not in its current state, not on release. I do like the idea of mod support. Vipe likes the idea of mod support. We both want to have it, but we're already stretching ourselves pretty thin trying to get this game ready for release. We've got a lot of mechanics and a lot of models to implement, a lot of stuff we need to finish coding, bugs to fix, and I would not expect the mod support for our game to come out anytime soon. If it does, it's going to be well after our early access release. But in the future, I would love to do it. I mean, I would love to let the community start making maps and stuff like that, and creating dinosaur skins and all kinds of stuff. So we'll see.
That'll be nice.
Real quick, there's a lot of spamming going on in QnA chat, but Fearful is hosting a stream of the QnA while playing on one of our testing servers. If anyone wants to watch some gameplay of Mosasaurus or other creatures.
Nice. That's awesome.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad Fearful's doing that. We did do a stream at one point, actually, on a previous Q&A, but I actually found it more distracting while I was trying to kind of talk through the answers. So we kind of only did that one time. But yeah, Fearfuls, that sounds great. I'm very happy you're doing that.
Awesome. Alright, so next question from Mistego. Will Acro be considered an apex due to it currently being the only big carnivore right now?
Well, I'll tell you how we usually do the balance on some of these larger theropods. So we do have Acro, we do have Megalo, and we're very soon going to have Rex. So the way we're balancing these creatures is we're kind of putting them on a spectrum. Megalosaurus is faster than Acro, which is faster than Rex. Rex does more damage than Acro, which does more damage than Megalo. Rex has more HP. You know, we kind of just put them all in the spectrum. So it's kind of, you can consider the Rex will probably be a more extreme version of the Acro. We've thought about giving it a grab and toss mechanic, but I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get that coded up before release or not. My computer breaking on me has really set me back on game development. But I don't know. I mean, the word apex doesn't really carry the same meaning in our community as it would on the Isle.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Who wants to read questions?
I could read them.
Sure, yeah.
I hear a dog.
Yeah,
Here.
Will there be any way of creating custom maps?
If we get mod support in the game, then yes, that's one of the first things we'll add for our mod support, if or when we do it. Now, I cannot guarantee it, but if or when we do it, mod map making is probably the first thing we'll let people start doing.
Will there be a dev kit, and if so, will it be public?
Same question. If we get a dev kit out, it will be public. I have no intention of restricting access to a dev kit if we get it working. But I mean, again, this is out in the future. Right now, we're kind of a little overwhelmed just trying to get our game ready for our Steam release. So dev kit's kind of a big thing out on top of it that we're not quite ready to start working on yet.
Will storms in any way affect the environment, like get rid of some foliage?
Oh, they do. I like this question quite a bit. So, the storms in our game are quite interesting the way they're generated. So they're entirely procedural. And what that means is that a storm is, during the runtime of the game, generating a constant profile. It's controlling the wind, the rain, the fog, the lightning, likelihood of spawning tornadoes. It's controlling storm surge. So if you get a really bad storm, it will cause pretty drastic changes on the map. One of the most notable changes that storms can do that pose a major threat is they start raising the ocean plane. And the ocean plane can rise quite a bit to the point where it starts taking over a lot of the land masses on the map. And when you've got a lot of hungry aquatic animals swimming around out there on a rising ocean, it can get pretty scary. We do also have lightning. We had it spawn forest fires at one point that would burn large chunks of foliage on the map. We ended up having to temporarily disable that mechanic because it was causing a lot of server lag and was just generally being problematic. I'd like to get it working again someday, and it's likely we will go back and readdress it since it's been almost a year since we had that working the first time. We do also have the rain in general just causes a lot of stress. So typically animals will need to either get near one another to get positive comfort boosts, or they will need to take shelter in caves during extreme weather events. There's also tornadoes that spawn, and they will tear all the foliage up and throw it everywhere. So those are kind of funny. But yeah, the weather has a pretty big influence on the map. We also have tides. Tides go up and down on about an hourly clock. And a lot of our maps are designed to deliberately have like spits of land that will flood at high tide and will be safe at low tide. So there's kind of like land bridges where you're safe from aquatic animals only during low tide. Some of our caves will deliberately have choke points in them where the water will raise up enough to make it hard to get through at high tide for terrestrials and hard to get through at low tide for aquatics. And we're planning to add a drought system as well, where an absence of rain will start draining the freshwater sources and cause kind of a big water shortage on the map where it's harder to find water, which might cause some conflict on players because they're all thirsty and there's not much water left. So that's kind of a general idea of where we're going with our weather.
That sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, this is a question for the Rogue Realism staff team. Since Beast of Bermuda server will be realism, will it have to use realistic skin colors?
Well, probably. I mean, I don't want to say definitely, just in case we change our minds, but more than likely, yeah.
Pred, this is a good opportunity to explain the gender system. Will gender differences be a thing?
So as of right now, there is no difference in gender regarding stats or regarding looks. Now, we have had people ask us if we could tailor our skin customization system to restrict the color palette in various ways based off of which gender you are, letting the males be brighter or something like that. But it's kind of hard to take a system that's so subjective, such as, is this a bright skin? What constitutes a male skin? What constitutes a female skin? And apply it to something that's it's got so many input variables. So we're probably not going to go down that route. At one point we had tried to create different morphs of our paramodel, such that we could make the male and female have a dimorphism on the crest. We never ended up getting that one working, actually. We still haven't gotten that one working, but that was one idea we had as well. We definitely do not want to go down the route of changing the stats of the creatures based off gender, because we don't want people min-maxing by selecting a certain gender all the time to be better at a certain aspect of gameplay. But with our mating system that we're developing, I actually was coding that this morning before coming to the Q&A, you do have to have a male and a female to mate, and the skin of the offspring does generate based off of the parent skins, which is quite cool. I've shown quite a few pictures of that on the Discord that we have, and it's in one of Liz's videos showing it off, how children will actually inherit a blend of their parents' skins.
Don't you also have the pheromone system as well?
Oh, yes. So the pheromone system, if you want to disable the pheromones, it makes it so that no other players cannot determine what gender you are. So it's kind of, if you want to be left alone and you don't want people bothering you to try and mate with you and stuff, you can just turn off your pheromones, and nobody will have a clue what gender you are.
That'll help a lot with like white knights or guys like, you know, being weird as they usually are in some video games.
It was definitely a protection we put in here on purpose, just because we didn't want people kind of, I guess, borderline sexually harassing other people in our game or something, so
Yeah.
we put the
Yeah, you never know.
pheromone system in there to kind of respect that.
Interesting.
Alright, can there be an attempt at a realism server prior to release like the Isle?
Right now, I do know that we have 3 different people hosting servers on Beast of Bermuda right now for our testers. One of them is James, who used to host, I believe he was the host of Isla Nublar. And we have asked that for the duration of our testing, we keep the servers as rule-free as possible, just because we want to test the game in its raw form. And a realism server right now might kind of restrict certain elements of gameplay that would make it harder for us to really give the game as rigorous of a testing. So no, we're not going to run a realism server right now. We are going to let communities such as Rogue Realism bring a server online prior to our release, though, so we can make sure that we have a lot of servers up and ready for players to join, and places for people to go when we hit release day, and we'd rather work out any technical issues we have before release day rather than on it. So, Rogue Realism probably will get a server up in November, but most people will need to wait till December to play the game.
Alright, seeing as we have the developers here, will Rogue be given access to the first server, or will it be first and best dressed type of deal? Like, will Rogue have the opportunity to get a server in and on the list before anyone else?
Not before anyone else, but any community that wants to get their servers ready before release will have the chance to do so. So just kind of keep an eye on our news channel. We'll be announcing when we're ready to start admitting community leaders to start renting and setting up servers from Ping Perfect or Comet's Hosting, or even on their own hardware. We'll be able to give a few previews out to groups interested in that, so they can get a few of their moderators ready and stuff too. So just kind of watch out for that. We'll be announcing it when we're ready, and that'll be coming up pretty soon.
Alright, will Beast of Bermuda add Alamosaurus as a sauropod to play?
I don't know. So there is, again, I wish Sepix was here. He's the guy that knows all of this stuff. But we had, do any of our mods remember that one sauropod that came up a whole bunch in our dino ideas? It was a smaller
I'll
one?
go check it real quick.
Yeah, it was a Margosaurus.
A Margosaurus, yes, it was a smaller sauropod. That's probably going to be the one over Alamosaurus. We have a Potosaurus, which is kind of our largest. It's probably going to be our largest sauropod. And it's pretty much a walking fortress right now. It's got excellent defenses of keeping predators away. But we're wanting to kind of go with another one that's a little different, maybe a smaller, faster one, just to kind of give 2 different kinds of gameplay to sauropod players.
Alright,
I wanted to add to
no.
that. If you are particularly interested in Alamosaurus, so feel free to suggest it in Dino Ideas. Typically when we're looking for which creatures we want to add, the ones that frequently come up in Dino Ideas are the ones that get more attention and more consideration from our team.
We can announce a link through Discord in our announcements then, just in case people don't have it or lost it in the Q&A chat, because it kind of scrolled in the list.
Yeah, that'd be great.
do you want me to send one your way then?
Yeah, sure, that's fine. No, a minute,
moment.
that's fine. Who wants to take over?
Alright, will Beast of Bermuda add bleed and infection mechanics?
So, we actually do have a venom mechanic that we're thinking about taking into sepsis right now. It was a conversation Souls and I had about the idea of bleed and sepsis, and we also had a great idea come up in our community recently that I still need to code. That is for giving our Acrocanthosaurus a bleed mechanic. Now, the bleed mechanic we have in mind is where a bleed would prevent a player from regenerating their health or regenerating their comfort. So it would kind of be a persistence hunter kind of thing. Attack something, go recover yourself, heal up, come back, apply more bleed. It prevents them from healing. And that's the mechanic we're considering. We haven't coded it yet, but I don't think we're going to do something like the Isles bleed mechanic where you have a stack on you and if you sprint it makes you take damage. For our venom mechanic, which we are considering renaming, but currently it's called Venom. And this currently is in the game, but no animals yet apply it. Souls wants to add the Zupe Tyrannus, I think it is. He wants a Zupe. And
It's Zupesaurus.
yeah, Zupesaurus, that's it. And that creature will be a venom or a sepsis specialist, depending on if we rename the mechanic or not. And what that mechanic actually does is it slows and eventually reverses the regeneration of your stamina and ability power. So if you are sufficiently envenomated, you will be losing stamina and losing ability power instead of gaining it. And this is all on an analog scale, so most of the mechanics in our game are all analog, meaning that it is a floating point value, and you can be you can be like 27.2% envenomated, and it will mean that it's a little bit worse than being 26% envenomated, for example. And that will really render you helpless if you have enough venom on you, because it will mean you cannot sprint and you cannot attack. So it's super dangerous. That's how we're probably going to do our venom, or I guess you could call that disease, because we might end up adding diseases that also give you kind of a sepsis kind of thing, and we might even just call it disease. And bleed will make its way into our game quite soon as well, in form of that mechanic.
Alright, can you nest?
Not yet, but we're working on it. So, most recently I have coded it such that we just finished doing our talent inheritance setup, such that players who mate can pass off some of their talents to their offspring in the form of hidden talents. And hidden talents allow you to have a stronger benefit to any particular talent than is normally obtainable through just talenting as the player yourself. We just also set up our incest mechanics, so we made it so that negative things can happen to your dinosaur's traits when you get incested. So if you want to have two offspring that both decide to mate with one another, it will cause a hatchling that has a lot of negative traits associated with it. Now, we also have the ability for players to invite each other to mate set up in our game. We have our nest asset done, and we have our eggs all made. I'm just sewing up the pieces right now to make it so that it's a cohesive nesting system. And we do anticipate that will be ready by release, because I consider it a very important mechanic for the life cycle game mode. So that's kind of, it's a work in progress, basically.
Alright, will there be an age limit for Beasts of Bermuda?
An age limit for people to purchase the game, or like
I'm
Dino
assuming.
Probably.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. What was that?
Like an age limit of like how old can you be to buy it?
Oh, no, we don't intend there to be any age limit. I think that we had to rate it on Steam or something. We said it was PG or PG-13 or something, but I really don't intend to have any kind of age limit on purchase of the game. It's got pretty mild blood and carcasses, I guess, but it really isn't a very violent game or a very graphic game, so I don't really foresee any issues with that.
Alright, we've already asked about ETA. I don't know if you want to touch on it again.
We're planning for hopefully before Christmas. That's our goal.
Any apex limits planned? Kind of touched on it, I guess.
for our server specifically, we're not sure yet. Not sure what we're gonna do there.
I do want to mention that in our game, it will not always be easy to be a large predator, because they do need to eat a lot. They are going to grow more slowly than smaller animals, and they are not invulnerable to small creatures. So if you are trying to grow up as a T-Rex, you're going to have to be a juvenile for a long time, and you're going to have a large stomach that you're going to need to eat a lot, and it's not going to be very easy to grow up as a T-Rex. So there might be some difficulty inherent in our game that makes it such that more players are more interested in playing something like Raptor, which might have an easier time filling its food requirement and growing.
Alright, how will nesting and growing work? Do babies inherit traits from the parents?
They do. So I just coded this like a few days ago. It's a really cool mechanic. I was showing a bunch of screenshots of it in our Discord. So I think to elaborate on this a little bit, I need to explain how our talent setup works a little more. So in our game, you get a talent point every 4% growth. And as you start talent, you can talent in 3 different directions. It's kind of like a triangular shaped talent tree that has bridges between the talents on the sides. And it's almost like an old Final Fantasy talent tree. It's actually where I got my inspiration from, was watching my brother play Final Fantasy when I was younger. But you can talent towards survival, mobility, or power talents. Power talents make you, like, stronger. They will make you have more health, they will make you have more ability power, you do more damage, you heal faster, you're better at giving injury, you can receive knockback and not go flying as far. Stuff like that. Mobility might be turn radius, swim speed, sprint speed, having more stamina, jumping higher, just in general being more acrobatic. Different animals do have different talents based off of what kind of niches they typically fulfill. The Raptor, for example, can jump higher and is better at its pouncing mechanic if you get certain ability talents. Survival talents are usually for surviving the elements and surviving the game world itself. Talents such as stress resistance, more comfort, lasting longer without needing to drink or get water, being able to eat old carcasses that have started to spoil without incurring some food poisoning. Just so, if you start talenting a certain way, you can talent up to 3 points in each talent. So, let's say you got 3 points in breath bar increase, so you can hold your breath longer when you go swimming underwater. Now, if you have a child, and you have 3 points in breath bar increase, then your child has a chance to inherit a +1 or a +2 in breath bar increase. Actually, the +2s can only come from if both parents have that talent invested in. And what that means is you have a hidden addition to that talent that always exists. So even though a player can only talent up to 3 on any particular talent point, the modifiers actually go all the way up to 5. And the only way you can get above the 3 is if you already have inherited those talents and you talented at the same time. That gives the possibility of breeding animals in our game that are particularly strong at certain traits that are actually more powerful in certain ways, like maybe you get a Megalosaurus that can run faster than normal because it was bred from 2 parents that took the speed tree talents and invested in speed increase. Or you might get a Acrocanthosaurus that's quite good at healing, so maybe it'd be really good at going in and attacking somebody with their bleed mechanic, backing out, healing up quickly, and going in again while their opponent can't heal because of the bleed. So you get these different, particularly unique animals that are strong. Now, that's not only obtainable through breeding. You can get these talents as well through spawning in Juvenile, but you get a randomized set that probably doesn't have as many positive traits as you would from getting nested in. And now, you might be wondering about this mechanic, well, why don't I just keep respawning over and over again until I get the type of talents I want? And the reason you can't do that is you can actually only see when you've inherited these talent points at certain growth tiers. If you want to see, for example, if you inherited a tier 3 talent, one that's 3 points away from the center of our talent tree, you've got to get to 80% growth before you can even see if you've inherited that or not. So, you're not going to just be able to jump off of a cliff over and over again until you get what inheritance traits you want. So you will get unique animals that way. That is one of the ways that our breeding and inheritance works. Now, I said that our talent tree goes up to 5, even though you can only put 3 points into each talent. You can actually go down to -1. And I just coded this yesterday, and it was quite funny, because if you get a negative talent, it works the same way. It's always -1 on that talent. And if you have an incested baby, it will give you a bunch of -1s and make a pretty sickly child. So I think that kind of elaborates a bit on that. I can go ahead and answer any more in-depth questions if people have any, but I think I'll stop there for the explanation of the inheritance system.
I also posted the UI in QnA chat. Just scroll up a little bit, you can see the general one.
Oh, nice, thank you.
Will Rogue bring the same structure to Beast of Bermuda? Moderators, guides, profile creators, wildlife, media, etc. Or will it make a new structure?
Pretty sure we're gonna keep the same structure on what we agreed on.
Yep. Mods, guides, profile creators, all that happy stuff.
What engine does the game run on?
We're using Unreal. Currently we're on Unreal version 4.18. We are aware that Unreal version 4.20 is out, but we see no reason to upgrade our software at this time. Last time we upgraded, it took us a while to fix some bugs that came up from the source code changing, so we're really not eager to change away from Unreal 4.18 until we have to.
Alright, does the Sandbox/DV test map server reboot plan frequently crash a lot?
It shouldn't. So you were asking if you wanted to have, like, let's say a big brawl fest and have a bunch of animals spawning on our tiny map and fighting for fun. First of all, there is a admin that would be the map, so you have to deal with the corpses that kind of gameplay. And our carcasses don't really cause much lag to begin with because we don't use ragdolls. We just spawn carcass actors on the map, which are a lot lighter on the CPU. So we really don't have the same kind of like choking lag happen when players want to goof around on the test map. We will leave our test map in the game for players to have fun on. In fact, I actually play on it sometimes myself. It's something that I do like to do. So yeah, we want to make sure that that mode of play is enjoyable, and it should not have a bunch of lag problems.
Alright, which factors affects a dinosaur's comfort? Also, how does weather affect dinosaurs?
So the way comfort works is there's a lot of different things that can affect your comfort. First of all, there is pressure. So if you go swim down too deep in the ocean, you start to get depth pressure discomfort. And that's a little more prevalent for the aquatics than the terrestrials because they're going to be in the ocean more often and will be swimming deep. So that's one thing. Terrestrial animals get uncomfortable swimming out in open water. So if you want to try and swim across a giant body of ocean water, you're going to start getting stressed out. Weather affects your comfort as well. So if there's rain going on, it's going to start draining your comfort and causing a lot of stress. The more severe the weather, the more extreme the discomfort. Being up against rocks, boulders, hillsides, and cliffs will help mitigate against the discomfort associated with storms and weather. So if you're caught out in the middle of a field, if there's like a slope nearby or something, you can get near it, it will help a little bit. Getting inside caves and shelters or temples will most certainly help us. Once you're actually indoors, it provides immunity from the discomfort associated with storms. And last, and I'd say most importantly, comfort is influenced by your proximity to other players. So if you're playing as an herbivore, you gain comfort from being close to other herbivores. So if you were to create a herd with a lot of herbivores grouped together, you would be getting a lot of comfort from your nearby herd mates. Herbivores also experience discomfort or stress from carnivores that are nearby. So if there's a nearby Acrocanthosaurus standing near your herd, it's going to be causing some stress to you. But since you're in a large herd and there's so many positive allies near you, you're probably still going to be receiving more positive comfort than you would be negative comfort from the nearby carnivore. That carnivore, however, is going to be experiencing stress from all of you at the same time, so it's probably not going to want to stick around for a while. Now, comfort goes up and down slowly, so if you're trying to hunt, you're not going to just start dropping dead because of stress. It only really starts to affect you after you've been in close proximity with the other animals for a fairly long period of time. Say 2 or 3 or 4 minutes or so, 5 minutes plus, it starts to get pretty steep. But also, if you're a carnivore, you experience stress from any player that's not in your group, that's in close proximity to you. So if you're a Megalosaurus and you're near another Megalosaurus, if you're not grouped, you're going to cause stress to one another. Now, if you do group up, since they are in your group, you will receive comfort from them, because they're one of your pack mates now. But if there's a packing limit on the server, say only 3 Megalosaurus per pack, set by the server owner, and you have 7 of them near each other, they're all going to be getting very stressed out. So that's kind of how our comfort mechanic works in most of the sources. Oh, one more important one. There are herbs around the map that will grant you a temporary bonus to your comfort. So a lot of players do like to run around the map and look for what we call comfort flowers. They've kind of been nicknamed comfort flowers, and they're these little yellow dandelions that you can eat. And the carnivores can eat them as well. We kind of consider them a medicinal herb, and they make you have less stress. So that sums up most of the sources of comfort that are in our game and how it works.
Alright, do you know what the pack limit / structures built into the game will be like yet?
We do know. We actually still need to code the pack limit. The limit on dinosaur species is set up already. So, I mean, it really is just you see a bunch of sliders when you create the server, or it'd be a config file, where you can set percentage values for each animal. And you would just say Acro 20%, Rex 10%, Megalo 30%. And then if you wanted one to have no playing limits at all, you'd just set it to 100%, which means that 100% of the players on the server could, for example, be packing. Now, if a player tries to spawn when there is a greater percentage of players on the server than is allowed by the server percentages, it will tell them that there's too many players on the server of that type and they cannot select it.
I have a question regarding that.
Sure.
Let's say that there's 2 people who are T-Rexes and it only allows 1. What if they are already a T-Rex and log in?
So that's something that we're not quite sure what we're going to do about yet, because it is definitely a loophole that we need to figure out. And one thing that I had brought up to Vipe about this problem at one point was disallowing the player from joining the server. And he said that he didn't really like that solution, so if they're not allowed to not join the server, then they're allowed to join the server. And if they join the server, then that means that they will be allowed to play, even though they're pushing it +1 over the limit. Now, that I don't know what we're going to do about that yet, to be honest. That's a really good question. We might have to talk about that one a little more and try and figure out how we want to structure it so that it can't be abused, because there are currently ways that this could be abused. And we need to come up with some kind of solution to that. So, Vipe, do you want to chime in on this one?
Well, I believe that will allow the player to join the game, but however, when someone attempts to spawn as a character, if when the server checks the amount of players that are saved in its database, if it finds that there are already a maximum amount of this particular species, it's likely that the player won't be allowed. Well, the player will be allowed to spawn, but no more player will be allowed to play as this character. So in theory, in most instances, it shouldn't allow players to go past the species limits.
I hadn't thought about using a save file. That's a really good idea.
You could also just give them a comfort debuff until the other animal is dead, but we could discuss that later.
Bad idea.
I actually like that idea too. That's a great idea. I hadn't even thought of that. That could work.
Alright, what are the main selling points for people who choose BB over the Isle? What features do you expect the main hook to drag people away from an already semi-developed game?
Well, first of all, I do think that our game has a set of mechanics that are quite unique. So, I will say right now, I used to play a lot of Isle. I have 1,800 hours logged in the Isle. I used to run an Isle server, and I played the game for about a year and a half. Now, I personally think that our life cycle game mode functions better. I just flat out do think it functions better than the survival mechanics in the Isle. And one of the things that I remember I found frustrating about the Isle's progression setup was that a player had no control over how fast they grow. Now, what that meant was that when you had full food and you had full water, there really wasn't any reason for you to continue being active on the game. Now, a lot of times it would mean as soon as you had gotten what you needed to progress to the next creature, you would go and find a comfortable place to sit and hide. In our game, you grow much more rapidly if you're actively playing the game than if you're hiding. Our food and water actually have an exponential decay rate instead of a linear decay rate, meaning if you want to keep yourself topped off in food and water at all times, you're going to need to be an active player. But if you want to straggle by with 20% food and 20% water, you're probably going to be able to do so pretty easily without drinking or eating very often, because they drop slower when they are lower. So I will say that I remember back in the Isle, there was a lot of pushback on progression. In our game, our testers, we cannot pull them off life cycle. All our testers want to do is play life cycle. We have free roam, which is kind of an analog to Isle Sandbox. They won't even touch it. They love life cycle. They always tell us we've got mechanics set up so nice, the way the growth feels, the timers, how long it takes, the way you can always feel like you've got something you need to do, be it finding some food, finding some water, looking for flowers to help your comfort keep higher. Just in general, we've had a very positive set of feedback from our tester crew on this game mode. We also have a tendency to add more unique mechanics to our game. For example, we're going to allow the Eryctodromius, and I've almost finished the coding on this. It'll probably be ready very soon.
Fred, you made me a very happy person saying that.
Yes, and the I say Mexi, once I get my new computer and can actually code in C++ again, I think we're going to finally get that guy ready. And the Eryctodromius, for example, it can burrow. You can actually dig burrows into the ground and make a little burrow colony underground. We have functioning mechanics such as swimming under the water, being able to catch fish, being worried about aquatic predators and stuff like that. We got mechanics such as latching for our raptors. The Velociraptor can climb trees. We've got the Packy has knockback on it, which is a fan favorite in our game. They think it's so much fun. We have a lot of emphasis on mechanics in the game. The talent tree is another thing that seems to really make players like life cycle a lot in our game, because you can really customize the niche that you want your animal to fulfill. There's less scenarios in this game where you see another animal and immediately know you're dead, because a lot of our smaller creatures have been given ways to escape. They might jump better, they might climb cliffs better, they have burrowing or something like that, wall climbing, ways to get away. It's more up to you as a player to be strong at what you're playing and to survive as what you're playing than it is up to chance and just being, oh, I see a carnivore, I'm probably dead now. So I think that we just got a different take on the play as a dino setup. Our game is mechanically entirely different from the Isle. And I'm hoping that we're going to offer a product that gives a more engaging experience for this kind of gameplay.
Yeah, all in all, they sound like two completely different games, really.
Yeah. And I will go ahead and say that the amount of customization that you can have in game, just being able to control and play what you want is a lot of fun in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the skill trees and the skin customization is amazing. Honestly, I'm very excited to see what they do with all the different creatures in the skill trees. Because the fact that you can take a land creature and basically make it whatever niche you want to is insane. It's awesome. It's something that, like, as an MMO player, I go nuts over. It's great.
We're also a lot more open about the way the stats and mechanics work in the game. We're not trying to hide anything from players. If you want to see exactly how much health, water, stamina, stuff like that you have, all of that's displayed very cleanly for you numerically on a character page. We have a combat log in the game where you can actually display, say you wanted to see how much you're growing, you can actually tell it to prompt you on the screen every time you get a growth tick exactly how much you growth for. You can tell it to tell you how much damage you're doing every time you bite, or how much damage you receive. You can actually get into the stats of our game and really see what's going on behind the scenes, because we're giving the players the tools to look at this kind of stuff and be like, oh wow, I did this much injury damage to this opponent if I take this talent, and I did this much if I didn't. So you can really start to theory craft and build your character into how you want to play our game. It's not fixed for you.
Alright. What do you think BOB can do differently compared to other games that will make it stand out and earn a foothold in the oversaturated dino game market?
Well, I think that a lot of what I just said previously really builds on that question. I think we've got a better set of mechanics in our game than the competition, which is the Isle. And I guess to some extent Saurian and Architect Project are other contenders, but the Isle is the only other dino game out there that really gets a lot of play that I've seen in the play as a dino field. Actually, Era of Terror on Roblox gets a surprising amount of attention as well. That seems to be quite another one that seems to have a lot of playership. But I just think we've got a really good set of mechanics, and we've got a game world that functions quite a bit differently that's going to be more rewarding and enjoyable for the player base.
Alright, will there be baby carrying?
Of course, that's going to be really fun. We've already got Mosagrab, so I know Mosagrab has some bugs I need to fix, but the baby carrying is probably going to work somewhat like the carcass carrying, where you can carry the baby in your jaw and walk around with it, and it's going to be very cute. We also plan to let you carry your eggs.
That's very cool.
Alright, what is the max estimated server size for players?
So right now, the most we've ever had online at any given time was, I think, around 29 or 30 players. It's pretty hard for us. What'd you say, Bite?
31 actually, but yeah.
31. Okay, yeah. Since we are such a under construction game right now, I mean, we are a very new indie game, and I mean, we're not even for sale yet. So the 31 was just, we got 31 testers on at the same time, basically. And that was during the last round of YouTuber videos when we had Best in Slot Riot and Gaming Beaver come play our game. And I don't know right now what the maximum server cap will be. I will say that it's likely we're going to need to start doing some more net optimization on our game. Unreal does give great tools for figuring out where your packets are going and help optimize that. Right now, I couldn't give you a number. I'd say you're safe running 30. I don't know if you can run 50. I don't know if you can run 100. That's going to be something that we just don't have the player base to test yet. And once we get out on Steam and start seeing how the game is performing on larger server sets, we'll be able to start collecting logs and diagnosing issues that might bottleneck our game's performance and improve the amount of players that can play at one time.
Alright, I'm gonna combine these next two questions because they're pretty much rolling off of each other. Is there any collision damage with the environment or with other dinosaurs?
Yes, there is some collision. So, in general, the animals in our game do not have collision. We had tried adding collision between the dinosaurs in our game at one point. We tried both mesh-based collision and character capsule-based collision. Neither of them provided a very fun gameplay experience. They actually got in the way of combat and of hunts more often than they really added anything to the game, so we got rid of it. It just wasn't fun. So we tried a couple patches of collision, did a whole bunch of combat tests, did a whole bunch of hunts, asked a bunch of players what they thought of it. They told me to get rid of it, so we did. And that is with a couple exceptions. Number one, the Pachycephalosaurus. The Pachycephalosaurus does knockback damage. And number two, the Apatosaurus also does knockback damage. It does so both with its tail and with its feet. And the reasoning behind this was defense. I mean, the Apatosaurus was quite a unique animal that we had to put a lot of thought into as to how to make this animal hard to hunt, how to make it so that the Apatosaurus could play skillfully and prevent being hunted, and how to make it possible to hunt all at the same time. So one of the ways that we did that was we made its feet give knockback so to kick you away. And that sums up really about what we have for collision and knockback, and more than that was actually negating from the enjoyability of the gameplay rather than adding to it, so we decided not to go any further with any of those.
Alright, will Pteranodon eventually be able to pluck fish from the water, as if it dives into the ocean? Will it have a slight mobility debuff until it gets to the surface to take off again?
So, right now our Pteranodon's in a bit of a strange place. We have a placeholder Pteranodon model, and for a while we had a placeholder set of Pteranodon fishing physics. Basically, it dives into the water, it's still in flight mode, but it gets slow. So you go into the water and you slow down a whole bunch, but you're still technically flying. And I kind of wanted to do something where you see the Pteranodon like dive into the water, grab a fish, swim back up to the surface, and then take off again. But players have really enjoyed the completely unrealistic set of mechanics our Pteranodon currently has for swimming. So we're not sure what we're going to do yet. I don't know how we're going to change the Pteranodon swimming physics at this time. It might stay the way it does, it might get revamped. We don't know.
Probably a post-release thing, if anything, right?
Yeah, I'd say it's likely, because we've got so much to do right now.
Alright, will there be blindness, and if so, will it be temporary?
I don't think we're going to do anything like that. In my personal opinion, that doesn't sound like a very fun mechanic. Not being able to see your screen, or having some kind of blur effect of some kind. That's also one of the reasons that we did not go with night vision. So, our game does not have night vision. At nighttime, we have designed the game such that it's bright enough that you can see without it. And I don't want to do vision impairments and stuff. Now, there is one exception to that. If you're a terrestrial animal and you go underneath the water, it will give you a much poorer set of vision than it does if you're an aquatic. That's the only difference we have right now in our game.
Alright, can we hear more about the whole family/nesting dynamic that's in store?
Sure. I guess I need to... Could you be a little more specific? Because what particular topic would you like to hear about?
I'm assuming they just kind of want a recap. I don't know if they were here for that conversation yet, because I believe we've touched on it already.
Well, I can go ahead and give a quick summary. Actually, Mexi, do you want to go ahead and give a quick summary? I kind of need to go and get a drink of water really quick.
Sure. So the family dynamic, currently if you are in a group, you will slowly begin gaining friendship between your packmates. And as your friendship gets up to a certain amount, that's when you can mate with whoever you're, well, opposite gender, but whoever you're at that level with. Currently, we're still sort of planning out the whole nesting mechanic because it hasn't been implemented yet. But you'll be able to nest once you've mated after a certain, I'm assuming after a certain amount of time. You will have to care for this nest as it's planned currently for a certain amount of time in order to keep your eggs comfortable. The more comfortable your eggs are, the more pluses you may have on your offspring. So it's more beneficial to take care of your nest as the eggs are developing. Alright, one second.
That's the gist of it.
So is this a BOB realism? I'm assuming that's for y'all.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be realism server. It's not going to be like, I mean, I guess suppose, depending on, can open like a random server like we have for the Isle where you can just like test things and things like that, but that might be down the road. But the first thing will be realism. Yep.
There's actually 2 questions on this. Will we be able to play as Dryosaurus? We currently have Octorodramius in the works. That's actually the one that I funded. It's very similar to the build of a Dryosaurus. It's not exactly Dryosaurus, but the one thing that makes it special is that it will be able to dig. I could go into detail on the digging if you'd like me to. Alright, so each individual will be able to have will be able to create 2 entrance holes. They will be able to combine and work together with other Octorodramius in the group to create a tunnel system as large as they want. It's planned that if a tunnel is not in use, it will slowly collapse. So you have to constantly run throughout the tunnels and dig them out and make sure that they're all good to go. You'll be able to store, nest, store food, nest in there, raise your young. Certain small carnivores will be able to enter the burrow when they're young and possibly eat orctos. The reason I added or funded this dinosaur was to give Velociraptor something on an equal playing field to hunt. I felt like Velo didn't really have much of a chance going up against Parasaurolophus or other herbivores, so I gave it something fun that you could play cat and mouse with.
I'm back, by the way.
Do you want to go into more in depth on the digging for Octoro, or no?
What you said sounded great. I thought it was wonderful.
Alright, is hunting, combat, stalking very much in depth, or is it like the Isle?
So, hunting is a lot about positioning in this game. So, we don't really have weight classes and stuff like that quite the same as the Isle does. Smaller animals are capable of dealing damage to bigger ones. If you want any good analogy for how the combat in this game works, it's actually a lot more similar to how combat in the Isle was back in 2016 than it is in the current day. So, meaning you've got more control over the way your character turns, you've got more control over your mobility, you've got more capability to deal damage to other players. It's a lot about terrain placement. So if you're like, for example, an Apatosaurus, use of terrain to get in a place where your knockback will kick players off the edge of a cliff might be a great way to defend yourself. If you're an Acrocanthosaurus and a Megalopack is eyeing you, getting in the water, getting near some trees or foliage, that might really help your chances of not letting them get to your backside. But in general, it really is just about getting hits on the other player while staying out of their hitboxes. So you don't want to get near the Para's feet, you don't want to get near the Apato's tail, you don't want to get near the Rex's jaw, and you want to try and attack them from places where they cannot hit you back. The circle jerking phenomenon is not very easy to do in our game, so usually you have to have a pack of smaller creatures to take out a bigger one. And in general, it is a lot like the really old Isle style fighting, with quite a bit more mechanics thrown into the mix.
Also with stalk hunting, like if you're trying to be sneaky, there are talents that remove scent and footfalls, so that also helps with endurance hunting.
Oh yes, I should have mentioned that too. There are quite a few talents that can change those dynamics.
We already touched on Dryo. Will we ever see different servers for different time periods?
Well, if a player wanted to create a server from a different time period, it really just, let's say that we have a wonderful release on our game, we've got plenty of funding, we're able to get plenty of more models in, and we've been we've been into early access development for a year or so. Maybe we have 20 or 25 models in our game at that point. At that point, we might be able to start having some players who go, well, I want to go ahead and do Late Cretaceous or something, or I want to do Hell Creek. And they might go ahead and put the species limits at certain animals down to 0 on their server, so that you actually cannot play certain animals. Because if you put the species limits at 0, nobody's going to be able to play as that creature. So, yeah, if the player wanted to host a server and do that, fine. I'm personally, on our official servers, we're not going to have caps like that where we eliminate animals from play, but a server host will be able to do that if they wish.
I think the only time that we'd ever do that anyway is if there's a game-breaking bug with one of the animals.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to kind of circumvent it until we get a patch out.
Will we be able to save/load skin presets we make or even download skins by other players?
We haven't set it up yet to where you can download from other players. My cousin Kenny had actually talked about this at one point, and I want to see if he wants to help with that. Maybe we could commission him to set that up on a website, because he's literally a computer genius. But at the current time, you can save skins that you create in-game. There is not currently any way to share skins with other players in-game. It's kind of a neat idea, though. No guarantees, but it sounds cool. I like the idea.
Alright, will there be any more aquatics added before Beasts of Bermuda hits early access? And if not, what dinosaurs are projected to be finished before or for early access?
So right now, we've got a lot of different animals at various different stages of work. For the aquatics, we have our Mosasaurus, which just received its model upgrade. We have the Chronosaurus, which is a new model. We have Elasmosaurus, which is a very old model that needs to be redone. As for ones that we'll probably get at, I guess actually first I should probably go through all of them. For our herbivores, we have Apatosaurus, which is a new model. We have our Para, that's a new model. We have our Pachy. Currently, our modeler is creating a new Pachy model for us. We have, for our carnivores, we have our Ichthyovenator. That's an old model that needs replacing. Megalosaurus is a new model. Acrocanthosaurus is an old model. We have a new acro model that's being animated right now, and I believe Meximi might be able to find a screenshot of that really quick from our news channel. Oh yes, right. For herbivores, I'm sorry, I forgot the Irichidromius. Yeah, it'll make its way in before release. We also have Lurdosaurus, which is a new creature that's not yet in our game. It's currently about halfway done being animated. And it's going to be a semi-aquatic hadrosaur that's able to eat seaweed. And we're going to be putting that in. It's going to be a fantastic swimmer. And very fast, long breath bar, able to go deep. And for the rest of our carnivores, we're going to have our Tyrannosaurus in. It's going to have a new model.
Acro's posted.
We have our Velociraptor, Vipe's Velociraptor. He made it himself. It's adorable. It's got feathers all over it. It's super cute. And that's going to be a new model. It'll probably be in before our release because it's only needing animation right now. And it's got several animations done already. Our Utah Raptor's an old model. We've got one flyer right now, our Pteranodon. That's an old
get that
model.
one's model real quick.
Yep, we got a new Pteranodon model that's being animated by Sonoba. And we have, I think that sums it up pretty well. That's what we've got right now in the works. We've got a couple people eyeing the amazing Apatosaurus pledge that might be, because we've actually funded this game's development up to this point from donations. So people have been donating to our project because they really like what we've done so far with the development and would love to see our game succeed. So we've got a lot of donations, and we have 2 donors that might be doing amazing Apatosaurus pledges for Sauropod, which is a large croc, and the other one is thinking about either Spinosaurus or Titanoboa. And those 2 might see an appearance depending on if we get those donations or not. So that's kind of exactly what we're planning to do with our models right now from the immediate future.
Would the skins made by artists be available to view or on the website?
If my cousin does the website thing, yes. Now, that's something I don't know if we're going to do, though. That's something that I don't have the technical expertise to make websites and stuff that do that kind of stuff. I honestly have no clue how to do it. And I don't think Byte knows how to do it either. But my cousin, Kenny, he's helped us set up our wiki, and he knows how to do this kind of stuff. So if we end up having a successful release, we might end up commissioning him for that work. And he would most definitely know how to set it up. You have no idea. He knows everything. So...
Alright, are you good?
Oh, go ahead. I'm done.
Something about Dryosaurus again. We'll skip that because we just spoke about it. Can you explain the wound system?
The wound system? So, like how animals have scars?
I'm assuming the injury damage.
Oh, injury damage. Okay, yes, injury damage. So, Our game does not have Isle-style leg break in it. Instead, we have a injury system where you can get injured on a scale from 0 to 100. Injury damage heals over time. If you're moving, it heals slowly. If you are stationary, it heals moderately. And if you're sitting or sleeping, it heals rapidly. And injury can come from a few different sources. The most notable one is fall damage. So if you fall, depending on the severity of the fall, you will get injured. If you get attacked by another player, certain players do more injury than others. The stomp from a para, for example, does quite a bit of injury. So if you get stomped by a para, it's gonna injure you kind of bad. And injury damage slows you down. So if you have like 25% injury, you're not going to be able to run as fast. If you've got 50% injury, you're gonna be pretty slow. If you've got 100% injury, then you're in a full limp. And you're not going to be able to really sprint at all. In fact, you're probably going a lot slower than even walking. So that's the way that our injury system works. Being bitten on the leg gives you more injury. So if you're an acro and you're sneaking up on a para herd and you bite it in its leg, it's going to do a lot more injury damage to it. So it'll probably slow that animal down so that you can keep up with it and bite it again. And in general, it seems like it's a pretty well-working system. You know, our T-Rex is going to deal a devastating amount of injury damage because its bite is so heavy. The Pachycephalosaurus actually does quite a bit of injury too. It's got a charge and it's got a hard head. And we just decided it'd be fun to give it some injury damage as its mechanic set.
Alright, any possibility for Spino, Giga, or Barry in the game?
I'd say that if we get that pledge for the Spinosaurus, that it will probably make an appearance. It's still kind of up in the air, though. It's not one that we were eyeing as a likely addition to our game in the short term without a donation. And one of the things that we already have too many of is theropods. So, I mean, all three of those are large theropods, or mid-sized theropods. And, for example, we still don't have any Ceratopsians. We still don't have any Ankylosaurians or Stegosaurians. We don't have a croc in the game yet. We only have one player. And we've already got, when we add the Rex, 3... Actually, with the Ichthyovenator, that's 4 mid to large sized theropods we already have. So it is probably going to be pretty low priority to get some of those creatures in when we have wide open niches that are just completely unfulfilled in our game on other sets of animals.
Alright, will food be movable, picking up corpses if you're strong enough / big enough, or possibly picking up chunks of meat to take back to your hatchlings?
Yes. So, that was in our Kickstarter, but I mean not Kickstarter video. That was in our Steam trailer, actually. So you can pick up the carcasses and you can move them around if the carcass is too big for you to pick up. Instead, you tear off a little meat leg thing that looks kind of like a femur bone with meat on it, and you can carry those around and drop them in caves and stuff. If you put them in caves, they're keep for longer, so they won't spoil as fast. And that seems to be a mechanic that a lot of our carnivore players very much enjoy. So yeah, you can do that. I should also mention actually that you can do that with plants as well. The herbivores can also pick up foliage and move it around the map and store it and stuff like that. And that's going to be quite cute when you have hatchlings and you can go around and gather ferns and bring them back so your hatchling babies can eat the ferns. And it's also helpful for carrying medicinal herbs to other players, such as some of the flowers on the map that might heal you and improve your comfort. There was this one particular time where Liz was a baby megalo, and I brought her a bunch of comfort flowers in a storm so that she could eat up and have less of a comfort loss.
Aw, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's a great mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
Is there an ability to lock a server for Steam groups?
Vipe, do you want to take this one?
Sure thing. Well, currently there's no possibility for servers to be locked via Steam groups, but that's something I'd like to implement eventually. By the time of our Steam release, I plan to extend the way the admins can handle the servers and possibly implement implement the Steam API a little more in depth so that that kind of stuff is possible. Currently it isn't, but I'm hoping to get that done by the time of our release.
All right. Asking about Titanoboa.
Oh, interesting. All right, sure.
They're asking if it will be confirmed for the game.
No, we cannot confirm it. It is something that a player has been potentially doing an amazing Apatosaurus pledge for. We actually have the mechanics for the Titanoboa's movement working in our game right now. It is using a noodle that Souls made me, actually. It's a noodle with a raptor skin on it. And
Oh no!
I made it because we don't have a Titanoboa model, obviously. So I actually got slither mechanics working in Unreal, where you can like wrap around the terrain and slither through the grass and stuff.
Right, I need to see a gif of a raptor slithering up a cliff, please.
Yeah. So we do actually have the mechanics behind it working. I kind of eyed Arcs a little bit to get some ideas on how we'd set up Titanoboa physics. And we do have those physics working, but we don't have a Titanoboa model. So unless we get that pledge, I don't think we're going to add it. I know I might change. Don't come a year and a half from now and we suddenly decide to do it and throw these words at me, because I don't know right now. But it's not really on our short list of what we want to do right now.
Alright, will you have the same type of system like the aisle for screenshots / locating players with the replay feature?
We don't have that in the game right now. I know that came up in another QnA we actually had quite recently. No, wait, it was last weekend when we talked to the admins of this. Yeah, it was you guys.
Yeah.
And I'd say no on release. It's definitely going to be no before release. It is something that's actually built into Unreal. So that is an Unreal mechanic that you can enable on your game as long as you interface with the code properly. So while it, in theory, would not be hard for us to set this up, I can't make any guarantees on that being easy to do. We can try, and in fact, if I find some open dev time shortly after our release, I would like to try and set that up, but it's not something I can guarantee for you guys to have at this time.
Alright, where can you currently get BOB? I can answer that. The game is currently in a closed testing phase, which means that sadly keys are not available to the public after, a couple months ago? So we currently have enough testers that we need for early access. So sadly the game is not available to the public. Pokezilla says, first off, thank you guys so much for taking the time to plan all this. I haven't really followed the game, but from the gameplay I've seen, and from what I am hearing, I am very excited to play this game. Now to my question, will sauropods be able to eat leaves from trees, and will some animals have a preference to eat a certain type of plant or animal to eat? Also, what are the chances of having large sauropods like titanosaurs?
So I can go ahead and answer that one. First of all, we do have the Apatosaurus already in our game. It's quite a large sauropod. And if you look at our screenshots channel in our Discord, you're going to see that a lot of people seem to really like playing that animal. I swear, I see like 2/3 of our screenshots are of Apato players. And now to answer the question itself, it's about foliage. How does our foliage system work? So first of all, most of the plants on our map are edible. Our foliage says we got all of our foliage and it's all set up so that it can be eaten. Now, depending on how large of a creature you are, foliage might either be not edible to you, or it might be edible but not worth your time. For example, an Apatosaurus probably doesn't want to go around eating ferns. A Pachycephalosaurus might like to eat the ferns. So, depending on the size of the creature that you're playing, food will give you a certain amount of, or eating plants will give you a certain amount of food. It's related to how large of your growth level is, it's related to the size of the animal you're playing, and if you are too big, if you are too small, you won't be able to eat it at all. So all of our animals have a foliage grade that they're assigned. So our Para is grade 4, our Apato is grade 5, our Pachy is grade 2, we'd make something like Stego probably grade 3, And the Eryctodromeus will be either grade 0 or grade 1. What that means is it's assigning you what types of foliage you will be able to eat when you're an adult. If you're grade 5, you can eat trees. And anything smaller than a tree. So trees, large bushes, small bushes, ferns, tiny shrubs, anything in the middle. If you are a para, you cannot eat the large trees, but you can still eat all the bushes. And since you are a smaller creature, the bushes are going to be much more filling to you than they would be to the Apatosaurus, who's got quite a large belly and really would rather eat the trees themselves. A lot of our trees, actually, you can eat the leaves off of them as well. So when you eat them, they leave behind like a leafless, like, tree branch thing that kind of looks like it's a wintertime tree. And you can knock them over as well. So the Apatosaurus will walk through foliage and knock all the trees down and stuff. So you feel like you're a big animal knocking through the forest. You can pick them up and move them around. So depending on how large you are, you can pick up certain sizes of foliage and carry it in your jaw and then drop it in piles. So there are a warning. Some of these smaller plants are built into our shader instead of actually being placed by us on the map, and those cannot be edible because we don't know how to make them interactable. But other than those plants, everything on the map should be on the menu.
Alright, will there be AI creatures on the life cycle servers, or creatures that are exclusively only AI, not usable by players, or will everything in the server have to be player controlled, excluding fish / very tiny species?
So right now we do have some really old Microraptor bots that I had programmed like in February 2017. I watched a tutorial on AI from Unreal and went ahead and set up our AI Microraptor bots, kind of trying to learn off of that. And they have faithfully stood the test of time and are still walking around our map today. So we do have small, really old, bad graphics model Microraptor bots that are still on our map. And they're kind of funny. I mean, I think they're hilarious, but they definitely look goofy. But that's as far as we have for the AI right now. I do want to do an AI revamp, and probably one of the big patches we're going to have after our release is when we rework the AI. I'd like to even make it to where you can hatch AI babies that follow you around if no player wants to inhabit your nest. But when we get to release, we're not going to have the AI rework done yet. That's kind of something we're going to do later. So for now, we're going to leave the Utahraptor bots on the map. They're quite nice to go ahead and kill if you're a large carnivore. If there's not a bunch of competition on the map, you can probably go around and eat the bots and get some good food from them. It's not ideal because you're going to be pretty hungry, but they get the job done. If there's too many carnivores on the map, of course, you're going to probably end up fighting over the bots. But that's about as sophisticated as our AI gets right now. There is an acro that guards a temple on one of the maps that's pretty aggressive that will probably kill you if you run into him. But that's about the AI you can expect out of our game on release. It works, it's simple, it's not great, it's not amazing, but it's there and it does the job.
Alright. Will dinosaurs be able to get ill and spread it to other dinosaurs?
We don't have any pathogen or disease spreading mechanics in our game. It's come up before. Maybe in a future patch, but right now the answer is no.
What was discussed about that is that it would possibly happen with bigger groups, because there would be the possibility for servers house to allow not like hard limits on groups, but if those players were to group up anyways, they would first of all get uncomfortable, and second, they would be more likely to get disease from, well, their density, if that makes any sense.
Basically, it's just another way to prevent megapacks. From summing it up. So let's say like there is a huge megapack, the more uncomfortable they get, the more close quarters they get, the more likely they are to transmit diseases between each other, is I think what we've discussed before. Alright, the Parasaurolophus has the ability to locate threats with the use of its calls. Will there also be a call to locate herd members, also for other herbivores?
We don't have that right now. When you are in a herd, though, you can see a group icon above everybody in your herd's location. So you shouldn't really need a call to find out where they are. You can just kind of like see them. So I don't really see a need to implement that mechanic, unless that wasn't quite what you meant.
I'm assuming that's what they meant by the question. Just when you mentioned that big predators will take time to grow, will the juveniles be weak and defenseless like in the Isle, or can they defend themselves against dinosaurs like small raptors, etc.?
So our growth stats scale a little differently than the way the Isle stats scale. I mean, I remember being like 0.2 growth gigas in the Isle spawned out of a nest and all that. And our stats don't scale quite the same way. I think that the juveniles in our game aren't quite as weak. Just because some of the stat curves that we have them on aren't linear to their growth rate. They might be square root curves or quadratic curves or logarithmic curves and stuff. So we've done some different scaling curves that make it so that you're not quite as weak as a juvenile. You're still weaker than your adult counterpart, but a juvenile megalo, for example, probably is going to be able to contend with a hungry pack of velociraptors that might be after it or something. It's still capable of dealing damage. It's not super slow. It's not quite as bad. We haven't had too many players in our game really complain about the experience of being a juvenile, and most of our players are fairly happy with the way that growth balance feels. So I think we've done a good job on that balance, personally.
Alright, will there ever be tribals or maybe small prehistoric mammals like AI, like the fish that's already available to eat for small dinos?
I do want to add small AI. That'll probably be part of the AI rework. Souls actually made us a horseshoe crab model. And I'd like to get small stuff in the ocean like ammonites and maybe some dragonflies and small critters that go around the map that you can kill. The saurian lizard is a good example, actually. I really liked that mechanic. But it's not in our game right now. It probably won't be in the game anytime soon. Certainly not before release. As for tribals, we're making a game that's all about playing as a dinosaur. They're not going to be humans.
Alright, will sauropods be able to mix herd with other herbivores, or will they get too much stress?
Sauropods are actually amazing at providing comfort. So if you have a sauropod in your herd, it's like a big boon. It's not a bad thing. Not only does sauropod, or at least the Apatosaurus, not only does the Apatosaurus provide a lot of positive comfort towards your group as an herbivore, it also gives you some weather resistance. So if there's a bad storm and you get near an Apatosaurus, it actually shelters you from the weather.
Alright, so for breeding, the more generations pass, the stronger the dinosaur can get. Is there a limit on how strong a dinosaur can get through breeding?
So when you breed, it's really probably just going to be the first generation inherits from the parents, and you aren't real. There's actually a weak influence where you can occasionally inherit an inherited talent as an offspring, but it's not going to scale indefinitely. I'd say that if you are having offspring from two parents that come from different bloodlines and you're not having incest, and they both have their talent points done, that's about as strong as it's going to get, and that's going to be up to chance off of that to try and breed the traits that you actually want onto those animals. It's not going to be like you have two really nicely inheritance stacked animals that breed with each other and all of a sudden they compound and it gets even stronger. I think that sounds pretty cool in some ways, but I think for the players that aren't really part of the groups that are doing all the breeding, it would be pretty frustrating to not have access to that. So I really don't want to let the bred animals get to be power creeping up too much just because how are other players going to stand a chance? So no, they won't keep getting stronger and stronger.
Alright, are more semi-aquatic piscivore dinosaurs being considered?
We've always wanted to have a dromaeosaur that was piscivorous. We don't know what animal it might be yet. It's come up as a popular choice, or a popular suggestion, I guess, is people want to be a fishing raptor. We might also make it such that the velociraptor can go ahead and try and go an aquatic build and become more proficient in the water, kind of like the Megalosaurus movie I made. but it still wouldn't be as proficient as an actual semi-aquatic raptor. I think it was the Ostroraptor, actually, that was semi-aquatic, wasn't it?
I think that's
maybe.
the most known one.
Yeah, so that we might, I don't know, maybe. We've got a lot of other animals that are higher priority right now. It's more likely that we'll let the Velociraptor go ahead and choose talents that make it a little bit more effective as a piscivore. But because we've got so many other groups that we need to get represented in our game first.
Will any omnivorous dinosaurs be included, and how will that work?
I'd like to do omnivores. We don't have an omnivore in our game yet. The way an omnivore would work, and we have discussed this mechanic in the past, if we got one, is it would have to eat, if it wanted to remain full on food, it would have to eat meat and plants. So you would only be able to get half your food value from plants and half your food value from meat, and to fill up all the way you would have to eat both. That's kind of the general idea of what we thought, or maybe it'd be a 60-40 split where each one had to be at least 40% of your diet if you wanted to be full. Or maybe we'd even code it such that you started getting food poisoning if you didn't have one or the both of them. We're not quite sure yet, but we have considered various mechanic ideas for this.
Alright, will herbivores get more comfort / other bonuses from being with their own species in a herd rather than joining up with other herbivores?
Currently, no. The comfort mechanic doesn't give you a more benefit from being near something that's your species than from being near something that is a different species that's also friendly to you. Such as a Stegosaurus and a Triceratops would probably both get a lot of comfort from each other, and it wouldn't be more or less than they would get from being near another of their own kind.
Alright, will aquatic fisher class species be able to grapple their target? Example, grab and pull land prey into the water, forcing them to try and swim back to shore, if they can break the hold.
The Mosasaurus already has a mechanic like this. It currently can grab targets right off the beach and pull them into the water. And the Ichthyovenator can break free from it right now. We gave it the ability to struggle free at the expense of a lot of stamina, ability power, and injury damage. There are ways to try and be less susceptible to the grabbing mechanic. If you're overweight, then you're harder to grab, meaning that the grab lasts for less time. Because the grab on the Mosa side drains your ability power, and as soon as you run out, you let go. So the heavier you are, the harder it drains it faster, so they can't pull you as far. And they also can't grab you again with ability power. As soon as it's exhausted, they have to wait for it to regenerate, so you might have time to swim to shore. The Mosa is actually, I believe, the Elasmosaurus can grab as well. It can grab very small things, like it can grab a pteranodon out of the sky. But the Mosasaurus is much more known for its grabbing capability.
Alright, will single player be an option in the game, and if so, will it have a full ecosystem of creatures, AI, that can be hunted, herd / pack with, or even be hunted by? Also, will the levels of ecosystems such as easy, medium, or hard?
Can you repeat the second part of that question?
They're asking if the ecosystem could have a setting for difficulty.
Oh, well, actually, right now, if you wanted to, you could host a session and just put a password on it so nobody can join, or just not open your ports so nobody can see your server and play single player. That already does work, and there are, as I said, the raptor bots on the map that you can eat. When we do an AI rework, I do think that it will probably be more engaging to play single player on our game. Right now, I would personally think it'd be pretty boring. You'd basically just be farming the Utahraptor bots or looking for the carcasses that sometimes spawn on the map. And for the difficulty curve, we hadn't really considered it. I don't think that we're going to make it so the server operator can make the AI on the map weaker or easier or anything like that.
So at the moment, we don't really cater to single player.
Yeah, the game really is designed around a multiplayer experience. You can play single player as much as you could go and play single player in an MMORPG by basically just not grouping with people and doing quests. But it really is designed to be around multiplayer play, and you'll be missing out on a lot if you don't play multiplayer.
Alright, has there been any thought on animations that give you comfort, like nuzzling your mate or hatchlings?
Sounds adorable. And yes, it actually has come up before. Currently we're in an animation deficit, so one of the things that we've had trouble keeping up on our game is actually animation. That's kind of where we have struggled the most on our journey of creating this game. So I've thought about the idea of this kind of mechanic, but we aren't really planning on it at this time. Maybe in the future if players keep suggesting it and really want us to do it, but it's really not on our planned list.
Will you be able to tell if you're related to another dinosaur in order to avoid incest pairings? Like, let's say you both share the same mother but different fathers, or will possible incest penalties only be from direct sibling, ex-sibling, parent, ex-child pairings?
So, incest happens when you mate with somebody who is your grandmother, grandfather, father, mother, sibling, child, or grandchild. And right now, all of that information also gets displayed on the scoreboard or the player list. So if you press tab, it'll say mother by their name. So if you see any of those tags for a player on beside their name, that means if you breed with them, there will be incest. Oh, also, I want to welcome Souls has just joined. Can Souls get permission to speak? She's our
Oh, yeah, sure.
one of our developers.
No problem.
Hi, Soul.
Hello.
There you go. There we go. She should be good.
Mm-hmm.
Alright. Will you be able to... Oh, never mind. That one's already been asked. Will Beast of Bermuda get any Ceratopsians?
Of course, absolutely. In fact, it's one of the groups that I consider of pretty high importance that we don't have right now. Just because we started doing a bunch of, aquatics and stuff like that, we've neglected some of the more traditional dinosaur groups, one of which is Ceratopsians. So it is... I know there was a question earlier that asked about Giga and Baryonyx and Spinosaurus. I mentioned those were quite low on the priority list because we already have a lot of theropods in our game. Ceratopsians, the story is quite opposite. It is one of the groups that we do not have any members of, and I think that that is one that we definitely will be doing sooner rather than later.
Will there be a bully like the current Isle's Cerato?
Bully. So can you elaborate a bit on what you mean by bully?
I'm assuming as a scavenger, like being able to muscle people off of corpses.
I think the Rex is going to be great at that. It's going to be quite slow, but you're not going to do well in a brawl against it. It's going to be a very slow but very strong animal. So if people want to go scavenger Rex, that'd be doable by certain talents that make you a proficient scavenger. And that is a good candidate for this. The Velociraptor is also quite a good scavenger because it's fast and small. It can go and grab a piece of meat and run away with the meat hanging out of its jaw, and it's kind of funny. But any animal really can be a scavenger. I mean, if you want to go a bit, there's actually a scavenger talent. So the scavenger talent makes you more adept at eating meat that has spoiled. And it also makes you, as in, you don't get a bunch of food poisoning debuffs from it. And currently food poisoning sharply drops your comfort and makes you feel sick by making you uncomfortable. It provides mitigation against that. So a lot of the carnivores have that talent in their survival tree. It's usually in the tier 4 socket on one of the sides. And we also have scavengers able to pick off of carcasses that are quite low on food value without depleting them as rapidly, so food that is almost empty lasts longer for scavengers. No animal in particular is going to be the scavenger, though. All of them can go that route if they really want to try and invest in those kind of talent points.
Alright, does comfort scale to an animal's size, like a velo having or being less stressful to a para versus a megalo?
Most certainly. So size is part of the equation. Velo standing next to an Apado is going to cause very little stress on the Apado and catastrophic stress on the Velo. So it's all a scale of size. It also takes your growth level into account. So if you were if you're a small animal standing next to a big one, then you're not really going to cause a lot of stress to that larger animal. If you're a juvenile animal next to an adult, you're not going to cause much stress to the adult. So all of that's part of the equation that determines the comfort influence from one player to another.
Will we eventually get smaller insectivores / meat scavenging pterosaurs like Dimorphodon, or I'm not going to try to pronounce that one. I feel like I'm gonna like offend somebody.
Oh, go ahead.
Darwinopterus? Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's what it says.
I think so.
Just call it the Darwin. There we go.
There you go.
I don't know right now. So right now we've still got a lot of animals that are pretty high priority on what we want to get done. And while those aren't on that list, the more animals we get in the game, the more we're going to be looking around for what do we add next, and maybe they're making onto the list. But short term, that's not really something that's really made it on our high priority list of stuff we're looking at adding right now.
Will there be bullfights for herbivores?
Packies already do this. So, Vipe, do you want to talk about the duels?
Sure. Well, it's not currently fully implemented, but players will be able, whether they are grouped or not, to duel other players. When out of a group, it will be more like I'm not sure if we're gonna implement that in life cycle or if it is only going to be in free roam for that one. That would be basically fighting another player without killing them. Now, to get back to life cycle, what will happen is that players within the same group will be able to duel each other, and the loser gets kicked out of their group. So that would be a way for, say, a pack of Velociraptors to compete for the alpha rank, which is basically the one who decides everything. There are setups to create ranks and organize your own group, and well, then after that, it's up to the player to decide and to control how things actually go. It's not hard-coded within the game. What else could I say about that? I think that's the main idea. I still need to implement it. Maybe it'll change a bit, but that's the idea for now.
Alright, 1 second. You mentioned sleeping. Will there be a kind of shelter / cave system that you can claim as a home? If so, can you drag food back to the home?
Yes. So if you store carcasses in your in caves, they decay slower, so they don't get old as fast. They don't lose food value as fast, and you can take them into a cave. I mean, the only way to really claim a cave as your own right now is just to physically defend it. You know, ward other players off, growl at them, bite them, chase them off, kill them if they come in there. You know, that kind of thing. It's not really like any hard-coded territory system in our game that enforces that kind of territory claim. But yeah, you can claim caves. I remember Lizardium was actually stashing AI Utahraptors in a cave one time when I was playing, and I was a baby acro, and I kept sneaking into her cave while she was going and killing more AI Utahraptors to stash in there and getting meat pieces and sneaking away with them.
Yeah, it was really rude.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, you can totally make your own den and store your food in there and try and defend it. Just make sure that you keep an eye on it, or there might be players that start sneaking in there and grabbing tidbits while you're not looking.
Yep, for sure.
Another thing about the cave system is that it's extremely valuable to know where your caves are, especially when there is a storm coming, because that is, other than being near an apatosaur or a large pack of your own, you lose comfort pretty quickly in a storm, and that's the only thing that's going to protect you against a tornado.
We do have the partial comfort system implemented right now, though, which means that, like, if it's just rainy and windy and you can't find a cave, if you huddle really closely to a rock or something, you are partially protected. But if a tornado comes, you're not.
Alright, will the stats reflect what is making you comfortable or uncomfortable so that you can chase it away or get closer to it?
So, if you want to, we did actually add a little diagnosing, like, thing in our game where you can try and figure out why you're uncomfortable. If you go to your character screen to look at your stats, it will show up icons on your animal that tell you why you're distressed or why you're comfortable. So it'll show like healthy herbs, you've eaten a bunch of healthy herbs lately and they're increasing your comfort, or it might show that there are nearby hostile creatures that are causing you stress, and it'll tell you what you need to do to remedy that situation. So we do have those tooltips that show up on the character screen that will help you figure out why your animal is unhappy.
Alright, what kind of biomes are in the map? How big is the map?
Soka, do you want to talk about this one? You've been working on the map a lot. That's Lemon, by the way. Can Lemon get the ability to speak?
Oh yeah, sure.
Lemon is her name on she and I used to play a lot of Isle together. She's named Ahsoka, and she's a brutal killer. But she's also helping us with map design quite a bit. So she's become kind of part of our little team here as well, helping us create maps for Beast of Bermuda.
I just gave her the permission. She might have to disconnect, reconnect to get it to be able to work for her.
She may also be AFK.
Oh, there she goes. Okay, we're good.
Yep, there she is.
Okay, what was the question?
Let me. What is the size of the map?
The map that I made right now is pretty small. It's not a huge map, mostly because we don't have a huge player base yet, so we haven't had the need for a huge map. But there is a larger map in the making right now. The current map that most people play on is Forest Island, and have we talked about the growth islands yet that are present on the maps? Okay, well, it's consisted of 2 large islands and 1 medium-sized island, like in the middle, and then there's another like really small island in the middle of the map that has a growth island. And the way this was designed was to encourage players to cross the water and risk dying to like aquatics. Like you'll have to cross the water to get to the growth island and risk getting grabbed by a moza or like attacked by a chrono or something like that. And the growth island boosts your growth a lot, so it depends on how close you are to it. The first boost you get is usually about 25%, and the second is about 50%. So it's a really good way for players a good system to have players migrating around the map so that you don't have players just sitting in one position for extended amounts of time and that kind of thing. So I hope that answered that question good.
What biomes consist of the island?
We don't really have, like, biomes don't really do anything right now. So it's mainly just the coniferous island, but the new larger map is it's mostly tropical.
Alright. Will there be something to prevent ass riding like what happens in the Isle?
Yes. So, I used to do a lot of Isle PvP, and back in the first, I think, year or so of the game, the ass riding or circle jerking and all that, I was quite good at doing that, but there was a lot of talent to it, and it was difficult to do, especially when you were fighting an experienced player who knew how to counter it. But there was a certain patch that came out in the Isle that made it so that it was much easier to do this mechanic. And it got to the point where you could like really easily follow people and bite them on the butt and they couldn't do anything about it. And then they released another patch that implemented alt turning that made it impossible to do. So in our game, we tried to make it so that it is doable, but difficult, and the defendant, if they know what they're doing in our game, can definitely get you off. So it's not just like, oh, somebody's behind me, I'm screwed. It's more like somebody's behind me, I can do this or this or this to try and shake them off, and if they get shaken off, then I can kill them. And it's quite a bit. The entire field of doing our animal is different. So I'm quite curious to see how players behave in our game regarding the way we have set up our characters' movement, because they don't move like the Isle's animals do.
Alright, if you decide to add a smaller dinosaur like Microraptor or something similar, how do you think you'd tackle this, especially assuming if you've thought about this before?
Microraptor. Vipe, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Well, the Microraptor is not currently planned, though we did talk about it. And it might happen in the far future when if we manage to have the fundings for it. What was considered for it is to be able to climb trees and stuff, much like the Velociraptor, but of course also glide from trees to trees. However, it's all just speculative right now because, well, it's not here at all. Not even mechanics, only the climbing is here. But yeah, it might happen in the future.
Alright, in QnA chat I briefly mentioned having more detailed textures within a certain radius and or blurring of things at certain distance, simply because of how small you'd be, not that I'd have any idea of how hard these would be to do.
That's also for me. Well, it is planned. I'm actually working on that stuff almost every day. That's part of the shading process and optimization. So that's definitely something that will happen in the future. And it's, well, currently in the making.
Alright, is there different calls for different things, like a help or threaten call?
We do have 3 roars in the game right now. We have just a loud roar. We've got a friendly sounding call or gesture, and we've got an aggressive sound as well. I've thought about adding a distress roar, and we might end up going back and adding distress roars as well as maybe a mating roar of some kind. But right now we only have 3. We have been a little short on resources up to this point, just due to funding being pretty tight on our game as we prepare for Steam. So we haven't really wanted to add more to the list of animations that we need to get for each creature. But hopefully we'll get into a situation where we can go back and start adding more emotes to our game. I'd like to actually add a lot more emotes to our game. But it's kind of one of those things where we're going to need to go back and do that. We don't have it done right now. And we probably won't have that done for release either.
Well, Parasaur also has its ability as an alert call that lights up certain carnivores. This might have already been mentioned, but I'm here late, so will there be like a sandbox progression or survival?
Yeah, so I went ahead and covered that earlier, but I'll go ahead and briefly mention it again. I won't go into a whole lot of detail this time around on that question, but we do have our life cycle game mode, which is what most of our players seem to like playing the most. It's likely what Rogue Realism will be hosting. And it's the mode where you spawn as a juvenile or get nested in as a hatchling and you grow up. We also have our combat game mode where you spawn in as an adult, you do not grow, and you are awarded talent points for surviving and killing other players. And lastly, we have our free roam, which is a good analog to Sandbox, where you spawn in as an adult with a full set of talent points that you can put it to or 20 talents, I guess, that you can talent wherever you want. And you can do whatever you wish. There is no growth, there is no penalty for death, and that's probably what you're looking for.
Going off of what Tristis is saying, will there be a 1, 2, 3, 4, and F call buttons like there are in the Isle? Or will there be more/less call buttons, or none at all? The none at all seems highly unlikely, but if there are calls, what will they all mean in terms of stress and comfort?
So currently none of the roars actually have any influence on comfort. So we do have 3 different vocals. I'd like to add more vocals. I'd actually like to revamp it and add a lot more vocals than just 3, but we kind of went with 3 for the time being. Roar, call, aggressive is basically what we have. And I would like to get more of those, but right now that's probably what we're going to have for our release, is every animal's going to have a roar, a call, and an aggressive associated with it.
Don't know if this was asked before or not, but what is the general idea of the story of the game? Will there be bosses to fight, challenges to complete, maybe some humans to kill?
So there will not be humans to kill. There are temples on the map, and the lore of the game is that it takes place on modern-day Bermuda. The Bermuda Triangle is a undiscovered chain of islands that still has prehistoric life on it. It has not been found by modern-day humans because it's in the Bermuda Triangle, and any ship or plane that tries to get near here has crashed. We might expand more on this lore. There were tribals that used to live on the island that worshipped these animals as gods, and that's some of our artwork is associated with this theme. The lore will probably get more developed later. Right now we're still kind of fleshing out what we want the lore to be for the game, but that's kind of what we're going with is modern-day Bermuda. And that the animals have been preserved by a mysterious force present on Bermuda. That is the same thing that's kept humans from even discovering the island in the first place.
Will there be a feather system in the game?
Vibe!
Well, there is a feather system in the game. The new Velociraptor uses it. It's well, that was quite a tough one to nail, but I did it. Well, it's a fully customizable system, which means that skin makers can do whatever they want with it, and the feathers will color accordingly. On top of that, players that want to customize the colors of their feather animal, will be also able to change the base color for each feather, and also, well, there's actually up to 4 patterns for each feather. It's fully procedural system. The patterns are made by the artists. They are basically masks that will allow players to color each part of the feathers the way they wish, along with the overall color of the character. Yeah, so yeah, there is a feather system, and I do want to add feathers to the T-Rex and the Oryctodromeus as well. And of course, more characters down the road.
I'm so excited.
Yes, Vipe's feathers are so cool. I can't wait to see them coloring.
I forgot something. They're also affected by the character speed. So the feathers will move more if the character is moving, and they will also move more if there's wind on the map currently.
Oh wow.
Vipe's a genius.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I want to see now. God damn it.
Alright, will there be fatigue in the game, since it was previously mentioned that you can sleep to heal better? Will sleep be required to maintain a good health when not injured? Like, if you've never slept, would that cause more stress, less growth, etc.?
That's come up before as well, and I don't believe we have any intention of making any punishment for not resting. Mainly because I don't think that it would add to the gameplay. I think that it would detract if you had to periodically lie down, because you would basically be requiring the player to have periods of time where they're not able to play the game. And I don't really want to enforce players having to lie down and rest, unless it's just for healing. So I don't plan on doing that at this time.
Will every dinosaur in this game have a special trait or unique ability?
Not all of them. Not all of them do. So some of our animals do have special traits. If there are any great ideas for some of the animals that don't have traits that people think of, then I'm usually pretty open to suggestions about them. But in general, a lot of the special abilities are given kind of based off of what kind of niche you want the animal to have. Like the Oryctodromeus can burrow, the Chrono can lunge, but the Acro, for example, is just big. It does a lot of damage. And it will probably get a bleed mechanic associated with it as well. That might be either unique to it or unique to it and just a few other animals. But not every animal does have something special that it does right now. So I can't really guarantee it. I think most of them actually do, though. Most of them actually do. So it's kind of a no and yes question, I guess. Depends on where you draw the line on special ability. So, for example, is the Apato's special ability that it can aim its tail and walk backwards? Or is that just something that Apatosaurus does as its regular toolkit? So if you were going to draw the line at mechanics that no other animals have, most of our animals do have a mechanic that's specifically designed for it that nothing else can do. But not all of them are on the ability keybind.
Alright, What is the penalty for death apart from obvious loss of the dinosaur? Will you simply lose everything and respawn, or will you retain something, like experience or points?
So on combat, if you die, you lose a fraction of your points and can come back and spawn and retain some of the points that you lost for dying. On life cycle, if you die, you're looking at a fresh spawn. So you're not going to be able to like die as a 1.2 growth Megalosaurus and then spawn back in as something that's bigger than 0.4. It's an absolute death scenario. Free roam, of course, there's no penalty for death at all, and you just spawn back in as a fully grown adult.
Alright, how long would it take for foliage to regrow or knock down trees to come back? Also, how would you manage people potentially mass destroying the terrain on purpose or mass stockpiling objects, potentially causing frame issues in high population spots on the map?
So, as for the foliage, each foliage type has a different respawn time associated with it. A lot of the trees take an hour to come back. A lot of the smaller bushes take 10 or 15 minutes. The medium-sized shrubs are usually about half an hour. So, herbivores already do pretty much mass eat food. So we've actually made it so they're quite capable of eating a whole lot of plants in a relatively easy amount of time. Because the Apatosaurus can sweep its neck and just eat giant chunks of foliage at once. The para can walk around and forage and just devastate areas of the map. But there's also a lot of foliage. I mean, I think if you really wanted to go around and try and eat a lot of the foliage on the map, then you're going to be hard-pressed to actually eat enough to really start causing problems. You know, because a lot of the herbivores are eating so frequently anyways that it's kind of hard to be that guy that eats everything. It's just not practical. I've never seen a player able to eat enough food to cause herbivores to starve to death. Now, for stockpiling lots of items on the map, such as picking up a lot of plants, it's not something we've actually seen before. Now, if it becomes a problem, we might have to figure out a solution for that, but right now there really isn't any problem we've ever seen happen due to this. I imagine we might be able to implement some kind of cap where a player can only have a certain number of held objects lying around before it starts auto-despawning their old ones. That would be a relatively trivial and reasonable solution to that problem. But first I'd like to see that there is a problem in the first place, instead of going ahead and potentially making it so players can't make as many piles of stuff because we're worried about griefing.
Alright, is there a smell mechanic? If so, how does it work?
There is. So our scent mechanic has clouds. It's cloud-based. So animals release scent trails that are like puffs of smoke that are only visible when you hold the scent key. There are talents that change the way the scent mechanic, the efficacy of the scent mechanic. So if you take talents that mask your scent, you're going to drop smaller scent clouds that don't last as long. If you take talents that enhance your scent capabilities, you'll be able to see players easier because the scent clouds will last longer and they'll be larger for you. So both those abilities kind of counteract each other. You can also... You don't release scent clouds if you are stationary and sitting or crouching. So if you're trying to stalk or trying to remain hidden, you're not going to sit there and just release stink clouds everywhere while you're trying to hide in the bush. So players that are in motion are leaving scent clouds around. You can also smell carcasses, and you can also smell fresh water. And they release large red or large blue colored scent clouds that you can detect while holding the scent key. And rain washes scent away. So if it's raining, depending on the intensity of the rain, players might not be leaving any scent behind. It's very handy for finding carcasses in particular. I always use it to find carcasses and meat when I'm a carnivore.
Will you heal faster if you sleep when injured?
Yes. So healing is sped up when you are resting. It is also sped up by having higher food, higher water, and higher comfort. So the healthier your animal is, the faster it heals. And this also means it recovers its stamina faster, it recovers its ability power faster. You recover from injury faster, you're going to recover venom and bleed mechanics faster, and you're also just flat out heal faster. And you also grow faster. So Oh no, you do not know. Actually, you do not grow faster when you are sitting or sleeping. Absolutely not. But sitting or sleeping increase the rate at which you restore health or other lost traits.
Can carnivores pack together regardless of species, or is there a species restriction system, maybe tied to comfort?
So that goes back to our comfort system. Animals that are both carnivores and are not the same species are going to cause various degrees of stress to one another. And when you spend longer periods of time around one another, the stress is going to get worse because it's not just like a flat instant effect, but it accumulates over time. And also, if you are around other players that are not friendly to you, such as a different species carnivore, if you spend a whole lot of time around them, basically trying to deal with the comfort loss and go ahead and say, I'm going to go ahead and spend time near that player anyways because they're my buddy, then you actually start accruing enemyship with them. And it starts making the comfort mechanic worse and worse when you're near them. So we do have mechanics that try to discourage carnivores from grouping up.
Will Eryctodromeus burrows be affected by floods? Like, will the burrows fill with water, causing you to abandon it?
We haven't decided that yet, because that is going to be a programming challenge. I don't think that'd be true for our first iteration of burrows. It might be something that we add to the burrows after we've gotten them out and done our first pass at testing. But on our first pass, they will not fill with water.
Will the specs for the game allow players with potato computers to play without huge frame rate loss?
As far as the rate, we've done a lot to optimize our game since we started approaching Steam. We've been keeping a pretty close eye on the GPU and CPU loads that our game does using a lot of Unreal's profiling tools. And we've done a good job on that. So Souls, do you want to talk about your computer?
I have a pretty bad computer with an integrated graphics card. And right now I'm playing the game and getting about 17 FPS. And all my settings are on low. It's a tremendous improvement from what it once was before, where I was, it was a good day if I got 10 FPS, so it's almost doubled what it was previously when we first started development. You do have to have, like, you can't just have a bad graphics card. You have to have something to make up for it. Like, my computer has a lot of RAM, so it's able to bypass having a bad graphics card. So, I mean, you kind of have to have one or the other. You either have to have a good amount of RAM or a good graphics card, or preferably all the above. But, yeah, as long as this game can run on bad PCs, it is possible.
You never thought you'd be called on to ask a question because of having a bad computer.
Is there a limit on customization on your dinosaur in terms of colors on said dinosaur you're playing as? Because if there isn't much limit on colors, I think that it'd be very weird to see a neon red Rex running around the map.
So that goes back to a question we answered earlier about the potential for server hosts to limit the ability of players to customize their dinosaurs. So right now you can set the color sliders to whatever you want. I know I've seen a lot of pictures of people showing neon animals from our game because players do make them sometimes. Now, there is a random skin generator in the game that will allow you to create random skins that draw from a natural color palette, and those typically look pretty natural. If we were to set a server option, which seems to come up a whole lot, so Vipe, we're definitely going to be adding this server option, and it will make it such that you are not able to change the color sliders. So you might be able to change the skin by re-randomizing it again, but that would be the best check I can think of for preventing players from creating skins that are clashing with server that might not want that kind of skin going on.
Hey, since nesting will be a thing, will baby apatos be stressful around parents? Will only be able to find... What? Hey, since hold on. Basically, will baby apatos be stressed out by their parents?
No. So when you're hatched into a nest, you will immediately receive a friendship with both of your parents. I haven't decided yet on whether it's going to be C grade or B grade, but it means that you not only are comforted by your parents, but you are comforted tremendously by your parents. So I'm probably going to make it such that hatchlings are fairly susceptible to stress and need to be near their parents in order to survive, at least until they start getting a little bit larger. And the comfort and stress system is going to play a key role in that.
I think 12 is typing one more question. That'll probably be the last one we take then.
Sounds good.
We've been going at this for almost 3 hours, so.
Yep.
We had a 4-hour one time. It was a
Goodness.
lot.
Alright. About skins will be possible to set it up so that through server options you can set a baseline for skins where you can set the possible limits that can be customized, e.g. a color range that players can customize without going clown.
That goes back to that same question. Right now we don't really have any limit on the color sliders. We thought about just disabling it such that you can only randomize the skin, but you can't actually change the colors manually as a server option. But we're not really sure how to restrict the palette in a way that would either not be an all or nothing thing. Like, how do you determine what a loud color is? We're not really sure how to procedurally check a skin to make sure that it's not fitting a player's definition of being a clown skin or a neon skin. So we're not really sure how to either change that so you can't do that while still retaining skin customization right now. Maybe we'll figure something clever out, but right now we're thinking about just disabling it and letting players randomize their skin on servers that choose to do that option.
Either way, I think, even if we have to make just a rule for the server itself, we don't choose a clown-looking skin, and then I'm sure people will argue, like, oh, this isn't a clown skin in my opinion, and it's like, well, our opinion is that it is. So it would probably come down to something like that if we had to as well.
Yeah,
actually, you have some ideas to fix that issue and figure out an algorithm that will be able to rather nicely decide whether a skin looks good or not. But as I said a few hours ago, it's only speculative for now.
Mm-hmm.
The randomizer does a pretty good job of keeping it natural, though. I don't think I've ever seen the randomizer put out a really atrocious neon skin. So if you did just lock it to the randomizer, you'd probably get only natural skins.
And then you could skin breed. You could actually try and breed hatchlings that have skins that vary from the parents, and it'd be really interesting to see players drift their skins based off of blending from the parent skins. And you'd get some basically evolution of the skin patterns in the game.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
You can also get the occasional melanistic or albino from breeding.
Oh, really?
Yes. It's like a, 1 in 200 chance or something, right?
I don't think it's quite that rare. I forget what the probabilities I set for them were. I think you usually end up with 1 to 3 albinos and 1 to 3 melanistics per batch of 100 or something like that.
There's also other rare skin mutations that pop up sometimes, like, I forget the word for it because it's really long, but sometimes you'll get the ones that have the orange skin or too much red pigment, so...
Isn't that called
really
piebald or piebald or something?
Piebald, yeah.
So that's when you only have 2 kinds of pigment. There's like an anomaly in how the pigment arranges. I don't think we quite have that yet, but we do have, I'm gonna look it up, but there's 2 variations of skin disorders where it's like you have too much red pigment or you have too much yellow pigment.
We have another question. Are there physical mutations?
No. So, one of the things that we just added support for in our game's customization code is the ability to support mesh variants of an animal. But currently we do not have any mesh variants beyond scaly or feathered versions of our models to support. So right now you can choose for our Tyrannosaurus Rex, for example, you can choose if you want to use the feathery Rex or the scaly Rex. And that's part of the customization setup. But you could extend that concept and say, well, I want to be the Triceratops that has the broken horn. And then we've got 2 models, one that has a broken horn, one that doesn't, and you select broken horn and it puts that one in there. We've thought about doing something like that. But right now we kind of have the underlying code set up for it, but we don't have the actual asset files to really put them in the game right now.
Alright. See, Turbo, you're typing. So that and Mike. Okay. The two of you, the last two, and then that'll be it.
Alrighty. I gotta get back to the code.
Can't stop,
Yeah.
won't stop.
We
Can't
want to
stop,
see a
won't stop.
game made.
Yeah, right now I'm actually trying to figure out a bug where if the player starts typing in chat and presses escape, they're not able to rest anymore.
Oh.
The most random stuff appears, I swear. The most random bugs. You cannot even make them up. Come up and text.
Some of them are a lot of fun. You mentioned the broken horn thing. Can a Triceratops, say, break his horn during combat?
We hadn't really thought about doing any kind of battle damage like that. I think that it would be pushing a little too far into complexity. I don't think we really want to go down to breaking horns or... we do have some locational damage in the game. You can bite players on the tail and it does half damage. You can bite them on the leg and it does injury damage that's more than normal. But getting into like breaking your horn and all that kind of stuff, I think is a little too specific. I doubt we really end up doing something like that.
I don't know if it was mentioned, but does the Megalo have some sort of like injury mapping on its model over time, like as it gets damaged?
Yes, the Megalosaurus right now is the only animal that has a damage overlay. We want all of the animals to have a damage overlay, but it hasn't been finished yet. And the intent is really just that we have a mask that looks like it's got scars and stuff on it, and it gradually fades in as you get more damaged. It's not a super complicated setup, but that's kind of what we have going for now.
Last question. Let's say that you're a giant apado at 1.8 or 2, and you die. Would it be possible to leave a skeleton behind as a memoir to your previous life?
You do. You do leave skeletons behind. You leave behind a rib cage, and Soul is making skulls. So eventually you'll also leave behind a skull, so everyone will see where you died. And the rib cages are scaled based off of how big you were, so sometimes you can log onto a server and see where you died, and there's like old bones sitting there from where your corpse decided to lie, and it's kind of funny, because I remember that same story back where Liz was storing all those Utah raptors in that cave, and there were a lot of rib cages in there from those Utah raptors.
I'd like to get it to a point where there's enough pieces to create a theoretical skeleton for each animal. Right now we have leg bones, like femurs, we have spinal columns, and we have rib cages. So I'm making skulls right now, but I think eventually we'll get to the point where the only thing that's really missing is the hands and feet, because those are so many tiny little bones.
That's true.
That's cool.
That'd be awesome. Well, guys, thank you all for coming out here. We really appreciate it.
No problem. We really appreciate you having us, and I'm really looking forward to our release.
Yes, it'll be really, really awesome. I'm really excited for all of this to go through.
Yeah, well, y'all have a wonderful afternoon. I'm gonna go ahead and peace out and get started on some work.
Alrighty, sounds good. Everybody can leave as they wish.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
No problem.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. And thanks to everybody else that came out as well.